And so what I think the church needs to do is we need to be able to speak into this vacuum where, I mean, I was a kid growing up in the 70s, we heard Bible stories in school. We talked about our faith, but that's something that millennials really, we don't have a common text. We don't have these shared stories anymore, but the questions still remain. I get asked all the time the same questions that people have been asking for hundreds of years. What happens to us when we die? Why does God allow suffering? Is the spiritual world real? And I think we as the church need to continue to find new ways to answer those questions.
I think the question in many ways is around, we've spent, 1,000 years or so, or longer, maybe 1,500 years as church as empire. And we are now just in the ruins of that era. And the dust has not quite settled, where church and state were one. We were a colonial empire. This country was built, and all over the world the gospel was spread through empire, through colonial empire. And that age has ended. And so we have now the vestiges of that, and we have the last generation of people that grew up in that world. If you can imagine, they grew up where in your neighborhood you had, maybe Catholic and Protestant. That was where you went for religion or spirituality, but also it was your community center. It was part of the fabric of your social structure. And today that's no longer the case. There are all kinds of secular sources and communities that do a great job at fostering community and feeding all of those human needs that at one time was pretty much just the property of the church.
My church can be relevant today initially by being relational with people in the building, but also with people outside of the building. And I think for our context, that people want people to be real and not to have this kind of phony religion that we're really practicing what we preach. So Messy Church in my community, which would be Sudbury area, it is set up for families, and not just for families, but it can be people of all ages. So sometimes we'll get families, but we also, in Coppercliff, the church is right across from a retirement center. So some of the people from the retirement center come over for Messy Church. And it's really designed for people with busy lives. So it's once a month, and we fellowship together. We have some worship, some activities, which could be crafts or games or science projects. And then we gather together having a meal. And sometimes when you gather people around a meal, you have fellowship.
I love talking about Harry Potter with young people. I was able to use my sorting hat as a metaphor for baptism. And we can look at different things that young people are very familiar with. For example, I think if a millennial is going through a crisis in their life, if their parents have split up, if they're experiencing a health crisis or a breakup or problems with friends, they're not necessarily going to turn to the Bible anymore. That's not our common text. Common text is really Harry Potter, and I know so many young people will open up Harry Potter and read that for comfort. And so what I think we as a church can do is we can look at the way in which the themes of Harry Potter can connect with our narrative as the church, and talk about the ways in which love and friendship and loyalty and compassion are shown throughout that series, and also shown throughout the life of Jesus.
So we are in a changing environment. So leadership in the church today needs to be comfortable in that environment, and needs to really spend some time and discipline around what is change management and change leadership. What's the balance around vision and trying to move forward, deeply listening to the environment, and also deeply listening to the people that you're serving. we sit rooted in our past and in our tradition, and we look into the present, into the questions engaging us, and as thoughtfully as we can engage those questions. So history is very important. As Anglicans, we have our scriptures, we have our tradition, we have our experience to help us navigate those questions.
I think that we need to look at the roots which we emerged from, because in order for us to transition so that we're relevant in today's culture and context, that it's really important to know all of the background history. Also, it's important to know and understand where we've made mistakes as a church so that we can address those mistakes, reconcile with them, and so truly seek to have forgiveness.
The role of the deacon, I think we've rediscovered the role of the deacon in the church. For so long, for generations, the role of the deacon went largely unknown and unobserved within our community. But we have, for the past 10, 15 years, tried to revive the role of the deacon and to show that it is a separate and complete order within the church that has a role to play in bringing the gospel to the community around us and bringing the world around us into the community of faith here so that we can learn from each other.
The deacons can actually go out and be, they can be chaplains of peace and love to a hurting world. And sometimes the doors are more open to a deacon coming in and just walking alongside people in a workplace. So the deacons can actually be a sign that, yeah, we come with our flaws, we come with our imperfections, but that we come as people who have been changed by God and who have been forgiven through Christ's act on the cross.
And so by having a deacon who might be able to bring those needs to our attention and to keep those needs in the forefront of our discussions around what it means to live as Christ has called us to live, what it means to love as Christ loves us, then I think that we would continue to put an emphasis on maintaining food security for those in our community who might go hungry. Well, I think one of the benefits of a theological education is that we can learn a vocabulary, we can learn a methodology, we can learn different ways in which we can express God's presence in the world around us through studying of Scripture, through understanding of our theology and our catechism, that we can bring that to light for people today.
I believe that deacons and any real leaders in the church need to have some training, either informal, through workshops, or formal. So from my own experience, I was churched from an infant. When I was only a week old, my mom took me to church. So I'd grown up in the church, so I knew a lot of the stories, I knew a lot of the concepts. But when I started to take my first theological course, I realized how much I did not know. And so I think it is important. I think that having to do schoolwork, it helps you to articulate and formalize what your thoughts are, your theology, and so by formalizing it, then you can better articulate it to others.
One of the things that I learned was this saying called praxis, theory, praxis, where you go out, you love people, you get into relationship with people, and then you learn the theory or you learn some education behind it. But that only informs you, changes you, transforms you so that you can then go back out into the world and practice that love again. And then maybe go back, learn some more theory, keep going back. And so praxis, theory, praxis.
If you can keep that introspective heart, you keep having these mirrors held out to you all the time, with these opportunities to grow.
I am in the pioneering track, so I consider myself, even though I'm a bit aged, I am a pioneer. And so when I read about the pioneering track, that I was really excited because it really spoke to who I was and how I wanted to be missional in today's context.